What is a god? Is a god a benevolent being? One that cares equally for all its creations? That despite the bad things that happen in life, it is all within their divine plan? Or is a god something else? Something darker? Something beyond comprehension? Something that humans shouldn't meddle with? Eldritch Horror refers to a subgenre of science fiction that focuses on the unknowable, the insignificance of humans, and the universe itself, oftentimes called Lovecraftian horror, as it was H.P. Lovecraft who popularized the genre in the early 20th century. This type of horror puts humans at the bottom of the food chain and introduces the idea of greater beings that don't care for humanity. What do these grand concepts have to do with Minecraft ARGs? Well, quite a lot. Given that several ARGs use these same concepts or use them as inspiration, such as Joost Joe or wikis who directly reference Lovecraftian deities, or other ARG YouTubers who use these themes of something unknowable or grand deities. Eldritch Horror in Minecraft is used to portray bleak stories where a protagonist is able to overcome the impossible. While these stories might seem dark or pessimistic in nature, they are this way to show that no matter what, people will always find a way to beat the odds placed against them, even if that is some deity that is trying to, kill your friend or something, because that's somehow what these ARGs are. But before we get in any deeper with this whole analysis and look into Lovecraft and Eldritch Horror, we first have to understand who H.P. Lovecraft was, and he wasn't a very good person. He was a racist and believed that Anglo-Saxon people were superior to everyone else. And this is apparent in his writing. If you've ever, even if you've read the Call of Cthulhu, you can tell, not a great guy. However, yes, he did contribute a lot to the sci-fi and horror genre of the time, including, influencing to this day, which is why I'm making this video. But yeah, we just can't ignore who he was when we look at his work. But now that out of the way, let's talk about Cthulhu. Okay, I lied. We aren't talking about Cthulhu himself, but more so the Cthulhu mythos. The Cthulhu mythos, of course, includes Cthulhu himself, and given the title of the mythos, you would think it centers around him. But this name is more because Cthulhu is the most popular character from this mythos. The Cthulhu mythos refers to the literary movement that contains several short stories and novels about cosmic horror, and all take place within the same fictional universe. Lovecraft encouraged pulp writers to use these themes and beings in their writing, and this continued even after Lovecraft's death. In a sense, the Cthulhu mythos is a giant universe with several different takes, but what I've always found interesting is how Lovecraft wanted people to use these themes, and now almost 90 years after his death, his legacy still continues in these stories. This mythos also shows beings known as the Outer Gods, beings beyond our comprehension and more powerful than any god you might imagine. Which, no, Cthulhu is not one of these. He is actually a great old one, which, yes, there is levels to this whole god thing. I don't know, don't ask me, I didn't make the mythos, that's just how it is. But yeah, I told you, it's a fucking universe. But for now, you just have to understand that the beings presented in the Cthulhu mythos are really, really fucking powerful. Both Joost Joe and wikis directly take inspiration from Lovecraft, taking his figures and modernizing them to fit within their stories. Yet they still manage to keep those core elements of horror and existential dread. In a way, they are adding to the mythos, if anything, creating a modern retelling of these concepts. Personally, I find this great because English major here, but I love literature and I love Minecraft, and seeing these two concepts coming together, it's just so good. It's so good because it shows how Minecraft is a flexible game, but also how literature and storytelling has evolved. Nyarlathotep? I don't know how to pronounce his name. I think it's supposed to be Egyptian, inspired. But I don't know. I don't speak Egyptian. I just speak English y español. ¿Y qué quieres de mí? What do you want from me? That's sort of only two languages to speak. Nyarlathotep? Nyarlathotep. I think it's Nyarlathotep. That's how I'm gonna pronounce it. And if it's wrong, I apologize. But like, I looked up so many like pronunciation guides, and I suck at pronouncing names, especially like. I'm sorry. So now, this is a short story which shows us how Nyarlathotep messes with humanity. Unlike the other beings in this mythos, Nyarlathotep often mingles with humans. He uses his intelligence, manipulation, and technology to drive humans to madness or even self-destruction. In his short story, he travels around the world, and whenever he leaves a place, only inescapable nightmares remain for those unlucky enough to cross his path. He is an outer god, which, as I explained earlier, are cosmic entities with seemingly unknowable power, often called the Crawling Chaos, which has nothing to do with Lovecraft's other short story called The Crawling Chaos, which that one is about the effects of opium, which, yeah, sure, do, just make it confusing for everyone else, yeah, why don't you? Either way, Nyarlathotep is first used in Joost Joe's video, I Tricked My Friends into My Minecraft ARG. And as the title suggests, he tells his friends to join his server only for them to be shoved into an ARG. Slowly, his friends begin lying or tricked into being left alone, and while we don't see any creature or monster, the fact that there is an entity that seems to be splitting them apart is terrifying, and I'm not going to spoil anything, but the ending certainly leaves you wanting no more. And while the first video has 2 million views, the rest of the series doesn't have that many, which honestly, that, like, with how beautifully crafted and, like, the story is, it deserves more. But, moving on. The point of Joost's video is to show an entity powerful as Nyarlathotep can be defeated, not because of power or magic, but because of the persistence and ingenuity of humans. And as I said, we don't see this entity or being, but we do see traces of it, which are these different symbols that the characters see as they journey to find whatever it is they're looking for. This adds to the idea that they are not alone and tells us a bit about this being before we even know that there is something in this world. While we don't know exactly what Lovecraft intended with his stories, one argument can be made that they were to show humanity hope. Sure, most of his stories end in humanity ending, or going mad, or not so pleasant things happening to humanity. Yeah, they're all pretty pessimistic. But what is darkness without the light? Without hope? Joost takes the story of the Crawling Chaos and once again, without spoiling anything, has a powerful entity in a game. Nyarlathotep is stuck in a game. He is not as powerful, but he is smart and manipulative. However, by placing the setting in Minecraft, that actually gives the characters an advantage. Yes, this is reminiscent of Wi-Fi series, but that's why I'm putting them together in this video, because of their similarities, but also because they more so take inspiration from Lovecraft and Eldritch Horror. However, it is a good point, because we humans, we understand a video game. No matter how much a god might try, they could never truly understand what it means to be human. That is their one weakness. They can never predict how a human will react or behave. While we are flawed, we are also incredibly stubborn. And in this video, those are our characters' saving graces. The King in Yellow is a novel of interconnected short stories by Robert W. Chambers. It centers around a forbidden play, and anyone who reads it is driven to madness. Now, this novel was published in 1895, and at this time, Lovecraft would have been about 5 years old. So yeah, when Lovecraft started writing, he actually used this novel as inspiration for his own works, eventually adapting the King in Yellow into the Cthulhu mythos. And he is actually only mentioned once in his novella The Whisper in Darkness, and it is August Derleth, who named Hatzor as a great old one in his stories. We will get into Derleth later, as we really can't discuss Lovecraft without mentioning who Derleth was. Either way, most of us are familiar with a modern version of The King in Yellow, which is Wiki's interpretation. From these versions of The King in Yellow, however, we do see more of that Lovecraftian influence in searching for a world that doesn't exist. We don't see Hatzor until the second video, but our protagonist Derleth does, and he shields the audience from this being. In many of Lovecraft's works, the protagonist goes mad, which to a certain degree Derleth kind of goes insane, as we learn he can't look away from his computer without his head hurting, which yeah, pretty Lovecraftian if you ask me. However, I am actually surprised at how the King in Yellow is portrayed once the audience does get to see him. In Lovecraft's works, most beings are described as abstract or massive. The King in Yellow is these things, like, showing himself in pure darkness or as ice. But even this is intentional to his character, as the only other time we don't see him is in the finale of the first video. This is where that abstract or even more terrifying form could be. In horror, there's usually the saying of don't show your monster, and this is because your imagination tends to fill in that gap and create something even more terrifying or unique. This advice doesn't always work in movies, but the reason it works in the Wi-Fi's video is because everything leads up to this point, and we don't see anything. Not a glimpse of the king, we do see the village and the statue, but even this can prepare you for not seeing anything. There is also the protagonist himself. Dear Lord, the reason he has to be the one to find the King in Yellow is because he is the only one smart enough to look him in the eye and outsmart him. Yes, we also follow Avery, and we do because he is the only one reckless enough to search after a stranger in a Minecraft world. They are vastly different protagonists, but they are the characters we follow for these reasons. I think at this point we've seen many theories and things talking about these two videos, so from this section I mostly want you to take away the fact that these videos, the King in Yellow from these videos, is inspired from two different works, but mainly on Lovecraft's Hathor. The Leviathan is a Christian figure, however, he is also a Lovecraftian being, but more so as it pertains to the Cthulhu mythos, so this is not Lovecraft himself. However, going by the expanded mythos, Leviathan is the offspring of Cthulhu, which originally Cthulhu was inspired by the Leviathan, so once again, complicated as fuck mythos, but even so, these concepts still apply. But now, let's talk about it in the context of the video, The Search for the Leviathan. In his video, Wi-Fi's presents an investigation into this creature, where he takes the center stage as one of the protagonists. And what I find even more interesting in this video is that we see, you guessed it, nothing. Yes, in searching for a world that doesn't exist, it is alluded to their lord that he sees something. And that is kind of the same for this video. But the palace that we see at the ending only raises more questions than any question it might possibly answer, especially with the color palette and the style of the palace and the serene atmosphere that it serene, almost creepy atmosphere it creates. And Wi-Fi's fucking passes out and never cares to explain what happened to Wi-Fi. Nah, there's got something going on here. Like, I'm not here to theorize, but there's shit going on here. I'm analyzing, not theorizing, so that's why I won't get into it. I also briefly want to talk about the religious aspect of this video, as Homer, the other protagonist of the video, blindly believes in the Leviathan, and he wants Wi-Fi's to do the same, which is reminiscent of how religion is in our world. People claiming some greater being exists because they think it exists, therefore everyone else should. Of course, in the video, Wi-Fi certainly sees something and maybe summons something, but we don't even know if it is the Leviathan itself or something pretending to be him, or maybe something else entirely. Either way, I'll keep this section a little shorter as the Leviathan video is technically an investigation rather than an ARG. Besides, I'll just end up repeating myself, but I wanted to mention the Leviathan as it also includes the themes we see in Eldritch Horror, though not as apparent as the other videos I've mentioned. H.P. Lovecraft died at a relatively young age, and while many works were published during his lifetime, dozens of works were left unpublished or unfinished. It was August Derleth who published these works under Lovecraft's name, and those left unfinished or simply as concepts. Derleth, I cannot pronounce, I don't know. I told you, I'm not good at pronouncing names. Derleth was the one who finished and published them alongside Lovecraft's name. Now, while Lovecraft and Derleth both wrote Eldritch Horror, they had vastly different views about it. As we know, Lovecraft was a nihilist, very nihilistic, while Derleth believed in the typical Christian good versus evil, and that good should prevail. It was Derleth who said these stories should inspire hope, but Lovecraft believed differently. I just wanted to mention this because it's important to look at the context when looking at Lovecraft's work. And yes, you can have your own interpretation, but having this context just helps you make a more informed opinion or analysis. To say what to say? Well, what I can say is the world not really in a good place. Like, I don't really think I have to elaborate on that. But I think the reason we've seen these topics, this, grand deities, all these, like, very, pessimistic stuff with ARGs is because the world itself is not in a good place. Yeah, the world, not in a good place, but what I like about these stories is that they have a good ending for as many horrible things that happen. Yeah, they have more so either, like, a good ending or a bittersweet ending. Of course, I'm not saying that they should have one or the other or like a certain type of ending, but I like that these stories end with at least on a good note, if not like at the very least, people surviving whatever the creators put their ARG protagonists through. And I wanted to talk just a little bit more about the good versus evil. While it may not be apparent at first, good versus evil tends to show up frequently in any piece of work and any piece of genre. And I think this also applies to ARGs because, or like the Minecraft ARGs, because we have like, someday some bad guy, and then we have like, the protagonist who's trying to fight him off or like trying to uncover the truth or whatever. So in a way, it is good versus evil. Now, I also want to just quickly say that while I, try to gather all my information and research everything, I'm just a human. If there's something wrong or if maybe I misspoke, my apologies. I'm just one person. So, yeah, these stories were made because we hope. They are dark, and at times the protagonists are helpless. But we keep going because it is in human nature to do so, that we are capable of achieving greatness. So I ask you this. What is a God's will compared to the determination of humans?